let's go back to our big issue today. We are discussing the fact that great Yarmouth MP Rupert Lowe, my former colleague in the European Parliament with the Brexit Party, also elected to the House of Commons under the banner of Reform UK, has a bit of a checkered history with that party. That didn't end so well. Went it alone and has been really making waves as an independent MP. Well, he has now decided that it is time for him to establish his own political party. I get confused because he set up a local party called Great Yarmouth First, but now he's also set up Restore Britain. But I think they might... I don't know. But Restore Britain is a thing. He announced it. Shall we have a little look at the clip of Rupert Lowe talking about the creation, the manifestation of his new outfit?
I have chosen to speak to you today from the farm because places like this represent what proper Britain is about.
The farm in Gloucestershire, not in Great Yarmouth. Right, OK, let's speak now to Charlie Downs, who's a familiar face on this here channel, but today Charlie is wearing his Restore Britain cap. How are you doing, Charlie?
Well, I can actually go and get my Restore Britain cap if you want me to.
Have you got one all made up already?
I have. Yeah,
what colour is it? What's the Pantone of choice?
It's a lovely deep blue.
So everything's sort of, it's a bit like the boat race, isn't it? You've got dark blue, turquoise, and a darker blue. Oh, well, there you go.
Indeed.
Definitely not to be confused with the reds. Although it's always find weird in America that the Republicans are red and the Democrats are blue. I'm like, why do you have to do things the opposite way round? OK, let us talk about Restore Britain. I think the main question I have is... I suppose, what is so different about Restore Britain to Reform UK, which then sort of illustrates the why there needs to be Restore Britain?
Well, first of all, Alex, thank you very much for having me on. It's good to be with you. On this question, our view is that the meaningful political distinction in British politics today is not left and right, but it is anti-establishment versus establishment. And over the last few months, especially over the last 6 weeks or so, Reform have increasingly aligned themselves with the establishment, and this has been most clearly embodied in the defections that they have taken from the Conservative Party. This is not an original line of criticism from us, by the way. A lot of people have been saying this. But what it has left is a gulf on that wing of politics that is authentically anti-establishment, that is not prepared to take in failed ministers, careerist politicians looking to save their skin, and it is instead offering a genuinely radical alternative vision for the future of this country. Because Reform UK are trading on the idea that they are an anti-establishment party. But if you look at what they actually believe, and if you look at what they have been saying, really since they launched, they are nothing of the sort.
OK, OK, that's... I want to sort of dig into some of these things. So, first of all, in terms of defections, Rupert Lowe was a member of the Conservative Party. He used to donate significant amounts of money to them. In many respects, he is a Conservative defector. He might not have been elected to them, but his heritage was with that party.
I mean, but so was pretty much everybody in.
So yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So what does it matter then if other people have been part of the Conservatives are with Reform? And does that mean that there's no way, you know, if Restore Britain, if a sitting Conservative MP or a former minister who has a wealth of experience knowing how to run a department comes and says, I want to help you guys, I believe in what you're doing, does that mean you're just going to automatically go, absolutely not?
Well, Rupert Lowe was never elected as a Conservative MP, whereas Robert Jenrick presided over the largest wave of immigration this country has ever seen, whilst he was the Conservative Immigration Minister. So I think, I mean, that's all.
I mean, he would say that that's the reason he was radicalised by reality, quit as Immigration Minister, and really decided to get the bit between his teeth to do something. So that means Restore Britain will never take any defections.
Not from those who have occupied ministerial roles in the past, no.
OK, now you said that Reform UK are establishment. I mean, I can't see that myself. They've only existed about 2 years. That's not very long to become establishment. But let's go with that anyway. It is older I suppose. But you say that Restore Britain has a radical vision that's very different to Reform UK. I want you to explain to me what that is, because Reform UK says we want to see mass deportations of people here illegally. We want to massively bring down the levels of immigration. We want to get rid of net zero nonsense policies which put a stranglehold around British business and industry. I can go on. What is it that Restore Britain are proposing that it goes in a different direction to that is radically different to that?
I'm glad you've asked this, Alice, because I think this is really important. So I think when we use these terms, establishment, anti-establishment, etc., it's very important that we define specifically what we're talking about, because there are establishment talking points which are very safe to criticize. And the one that I would point to is the issue of trans. Trans has become an almost regime-approved anti-establishment talking point, because it is the case that the UK government, for example, believes in the notion that a man can become a woman through the process of gender reassignment surgery, right? That is the official position of the British government. Now, it is not particularly controversial to suggest that a man cannot become a woman, and that is in fact the position of the great majority of people in this country.
And
However,
that's the position of
Alex,
Reform UK, is it not? I mean, I've done plenty of shows with people like Sarah Pochin, Layla Cunningham, who wholly would agree with what you're saying. So that doesn't seem to...
Yeah,
I want specifically, OK, to look at the programmes, the political programme of Reform UK, and tell me what it is that Restore Britain will do that's radically different from Reform UK. That's specifically what I'm looking at here. Given the reason I asked that, of course, is because Rupert Lowe was Reform UK and has decided he needs to set up his own thing because Reform UK is, you know, for whatever reason, not delivering in the way he would want it to, which is why he thinks there's a space in politics for Restore Britain. So I need to know, what is it, policies, what is it the party's going to do that Reform UK are not, rather than just saying establishment? What are the things?
I think you've made my point for me there, Alice, because what I'm driving at here is the fact that Reform UK will gladly say things that are the safest possible anti-establishment talking points,
such
like
as
men can't become women, for example. They're more than happy to say that sort of thing. Right. But when it comes to what it means to be British, they are very, very afraid to actually tackle this topic.
So let's go with this.
Recently, as 4 days ago, Alex.
So let's go with that. What is the difference?
Nigel Farage was on Nick Robinson's show saying that to be English is about how you feel. Just today, Matt Goodwin tweeted at me that British identity is defined by sentimental attachment to this country, whereas our position is that Britain is not an idea, Britain is not a set of values, Britain is not just having a passport, Britain is a people. Britain is a nation.
Okay, so Britain is a people and a nation. I get that, but that is a sort of that itself is a platitude. When you say Britain is a people, we're talking about ethnicity, then race and ethnicity.
Well, it's not a platitude because it fundamentally informs our positions on everything.
No, but can you break it down? Because I don't understand. If Britain's a people and a nation, well, that to me sounds like saying Britain is being sentimentally attached to the country. Britain is living here. It's being brought up here. It's being, what do you mean that's different to Reform UK? I need to understand this. Make it clear. Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Well, Reform's position from their very beginning has been no different to Blair's position, to Cameron's position, which is that Britishness is defined by adherence to British values. This is a term that I have been hearing for my entire life. It was something that I was taught when I was in primary and secondary school, that's what it means to be British. And if you look at the law, British values are defined as democracy, tolerance, the rule of law, and mutual respect and tolerance of those with different faiths and beliefs. Now, that, in my view, is nothing at all to do with what it means to be British, because the majority of British people throughout our 1,000-year history have not believed in these values. These are a creation of the Blairite state over the last 30
So what is it to be? So explain to me, what is it that you're saying makes someone British that is different to what they're saying?
Well, it's a far deeper thing than that, Alex. It's about a connection to this land. It's about an ancestry here.
Okay, but connection to that, isn't that what Matt Goodwin said to you, though?
Please let me finish here. More than anything, it is Christian faith. It is ancestry and it's Christian faith.
So if you're not a Christian, you can't be British?
Well, I mean, you are certainly, I think, less British if you're not a believer in Christian principles. If somebody was Islamic, then they are certainly less British, yes.
So this comes down to Islam more than anything?
I mean, Islam is certainly, I think, particularly Islam as manifested in practices like the burqa, halal slaughter, Sharia law, cousin marriage, and all the rest of it, is absolutely an existential problem facing our country.
But
and Restore Britain would legislate to ban all of those things.
Are those not issues that Reform are going to tackle? Why do you think? I mean, what I'm trying to understand here, Charlie, is it seems to me, from where I'm standing, as someone who's been in politics an awfully long time, that Reform UK are probably saying all the things that you believe in and that Rupert Lowe's believing, but just don't go far enough. Is that right?
So 2 points here, Alex. On the issue of Islam, you know as well as I do that Nigel Farage has been on the record saying that we have to appease radical Islam because the Islamic demographics in this country are set to grow substantially over the coming decades.
I don't think he actually said he would appease radical Islam. I think that's
in so many words, though. Come on, that is what he was getting.
I don't think that's what he said at all.
I mean, look, people are welcome to go and find the clip. It's from, I believe, Winston Marshall's show. If you listen to what he says about Islam, he says that if we alienate Islam politically, we will lose. And, I mean, you can interpret yourself what you think that means. What I hear there is capitulation. What I hear there is going quietly into the night in the face of a creed that has no history in this land and really is antithetical to our principles.
Okay, so how... In a sense, because first of all, you said he'd appease radical Islam. You seem to have climbed down from that, because what he did say, as you then quoted, is if we alienate Islam, there's a lot of Muslims in this country. So, and you've already suggested that you can't be British if you're Muslim. So what would you do about Muslims in Britain?
Wait a minute, Alex. I didn't say you can't be British if you're Muslim. I said that you are less British if you are Muslim than somebody who is Christian.
How do you calculate one's Britishness? How British am I? Am I 100%?
Well, it's certainly a spectrum. So somebody who has a British passport is on paper British, but they are less British than somebody, if they've come here in the last 5 minutes, for example, and got a British passport, they are less British than somebody whose family has been here for 1,000 years.
If this is a problem, how would you deal with this? Are you suggesting that people who are non-Christian, who might be Muslim, shouldn't be in this country?
Well, I'm not saying they shouldn't be here, but I am saying that they should not bring their cultural practices to this country if they want to live here, like Sharia law, like halal slaughter, like wearing the burqa, like cousin marriage. And as I've said already, Restore Britain would make all of those things illegal.
Rupert talks also about remigration. Explain to me what you mean by remigration and how that would be done.
So Rupert has never actually used the word remigration, and the reason for that is because it is a ill-defined concept. What we would say is that we're in favour of reversing mass immigration, because the British people have never given democratic consent to the policy of mass immigration and multiculturalism. In fact, at every opportunity for the last 60 years, the British people have voted actively against this policy, and yet it has still been imposed upon us. And so our view is that just stopping mass immigration, net zero immigration, which is what Reform's policy is not nearly good enough, because we have a net outflow of people from this country of about 500,000 a year. So net zero immigration still means a gross inflow of 500,000 people from all corners of the world. And therefore, the demographic change would continue to happen. And that is ultimately the problem here, because the indigenous British population is set to become a minority in this country in the next 50 years. And this is unacceptable. So what we would say is that any foreign national living on benefits, living in social housing, who can't speak English, who commits crimes, who is a net burden on the taxpayer, has to leave. And this is not unreasonable. This is actually the position of the majority of people in this country.
How are you going to determine, how are you going to make people leave who you don't want to be here?
Well, it comes down to changing what indefinite leave to remain gives a person access to. I mean, our policy fellow, Harrison Pitt, you spoke about the policy unit before we came on, Alex. Our policy unit at the moment is very, very small because we're obviously a very young party. But our policy fellow, Harrison Pitt, is doing a lot of work on this issue, on what indefinite leave to remain would confer and what citizenship actually means, because citizenship has been handed out like confetti in this country, as has indefinite leave to remain. And on indefinite leave to remain, an individual gets access to the full menu of benefits that are offered to people in this country, and that's just unacceptable. So withdrawing social benefits, access to social housing, child benefit, and all the rest of it from those on indefinite leave to remain would be a damn good start. Because
okay, but that Reform's announced that as a policy.
Well, maybe so, but there's still a lot more work to do on this issue, in our view, because just saying that you're going to withdraw benefits from those on indefinite leave to remain will still not tackle the demographic future of the country. And this is another area that Reform are very scared to touch. And I think that is
well,
because
hold on.
they're
You
basically
say
looking for
that.
approval from
You say
the
that, but
Guardian and the BBC.
Nigel Farage has already come out with what he says are pro-natalist policies.
Well, I mean, sure. Such as? What's he said?
Well, first of all, he was saying he wants to lift the two-child benefit cap for British working families.
Well, again, I would ask him what he means by British.
So, okay, what do you mean by British? Because does this mean when it comes to like families who have children, one is white British and goes to church every Sunday. The other is, you know, third generation, but from originally Asia somewhere, Pakistan, Bangladesh, pick your country. But, you know, third generation, born in this country, should they have different policies applied to them based upon their religion and the colour of their skin?
Well, it's nothing to do with colour of skin. That's just...
OK, but should they have different policies applied to them based upon religion?
Well, I mean, again, it's not about applying policies to individual people, but it's about outlawing certain practices associated with certain religions, such as halal, such as Sharia law and cousin marriages. As I've said already.
But I would assume that Reform UK, anti-cousin marriage, that they're anti-Sharia law. I don't know about the position on halal. I don't think they've spoken about it. But this is what I'm saying. I cannot see much difference myself between Reform and Restore. And this is what I'm trying to find. I can't see much difference other than when it gets into those really difficult, knotty, thorny areas of identity, ethnicity, and
That's
creed.
Exactly right, Alex.
And so what I want to understand, I just want someone to say outright, cleanly, honestly, what it is that you're going to do differently that Reform would do when it comes to those issues. Because outlawing cousin marriage, Reform will do that, I'm fairly certain. When it comes to banning the burqa, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was a Reform policy. Applying benefits, you seem to be suggesting that there needs to be a difference between the way certain things are applied to people in Britain based upon their religion, not necessarily the legality of their passport, their citizenship status. This is what I'm saying. This is when you start getting into the difficult area. And so if we're going to go there, if we're going to actually look at this politically as involving religion and genetics, ethnicity, whatever, Britishness on the sliding scale, I think we need to understand what it is you mean to do exactly, because it starts getting into a scary zone over there. Like, you know, I got people in my family who were not, their parents weren't born in Britain, like people I'm related to. Are they going to be harangued, harassed, not given the same opportunities? This is what we need to understand, because it seems to me if the argument is that Reform aren't going far enough, how far are you guys saying we should go?
Alex, as I've already said today several times now, we're not talking about discriminating against individuals. What we're talking about is outlawing certain practices that are associated with certain religions. And so that doesn't mean being horrible to people at an individual level, but what it does mean is recognizing that we have a culture, it is Christian, and it needs to be safeguarded, it needs to be defended. And it's not good enough to talk a good game about Christian values and British values. It actually requires robust use of state power to enforce these things.
Like what?
And on the second point, Alex, come on, you asked me a couple of questions. Let me answer the second one. On the second point about British identity, this is crucial because, as you have said, Reform are not interested in going into these thorny areas because they are too scared, frankly. I think they are cowards on this issue.
Or is it that they're scary?
I mean, what do you mean by that? It's scary.
I find these areas, personally, some of them start tilting into areas that I find a bit scary.
Well, look, we're talking about the very existence of our nation, Alex. Of course it's scary. But my answer to this, to what you're actually asking here, which is what does it mean to be British and how does our definition differ to that of Reform? As I've said already, again, Reform believe that to be British means to believe in British values. Matt Goodwin reiterated this just today, and Zia Youssef and Layla Cunningham and Nigel Farage and Richard Tice have all said this on multiple occasions. Richard Tice says that he doesn't care that the indigenous British people will be a minority in this country in 50 years because he'll be dead by then. Farage has said that demographics are of no concern to him. These are people who do not believe that Britain is a people, whereas Restore Britain says, quite forthrightly and without shame, that Britain is a people and that there is a qualitative difference in the Britishness of an individual, of somebody who's come here 5 minutes ago and got themselves a British passport, and somebody whose family has lived here for 1,000 years.
My stepsister's mixed race. Is that okay?
What do you mean? I mean, again, like, I think what I've just said is quite clear.
I don't think it is clear. This is what I'm really struggling with. I'm not finding this clear enough.
Alex, come on. You're a very intelligent journalist.
I know,
right?
which is why I'm trying to ask you, beyond talking about things that I think a lot of political parties are now talking about, banning cousin marriage, banning the burqa, etc. Beyond that, you then keep talking about this being about British identity and British identity being on a sliding scale, and you keep referring to demographic changes, and I understand all of these things, but why is it that, you know, where Reform have reached on this, where is it that you're pushing ahead radically different? This is what worries me, and I just need to know, you know, I just want it spelt out quite clearly. Is it just halal meat and that's it?
I think viewers at home will understand what it is that I'm getting at when I say that there is a difference between somebody who has come here in the last 5 years and got themselves a British passport, got themselves a indefinite leave to remain or a British passport, and somebody whose family has been here for 1,000 years. Because what we're talking about there is the polity that we are seeking to represent and act in favour of when we engage in the political process. Because if you don't know who it is that you're seeking to represent and defend the interests of, then you can't engage in political activity. So please let me finish, Alex. Come on. So Reform do not have a clear idea of who the British people are. Their only definition that they have stuck with since they launched, as I've already said, Tice, Farage, all of them have said this, is the same as what Blair defined the British people as what Cameron defined them as, what Gove defined them as, which is British values. Whereas what Restore Britain is saying is there is more to being British than that.
Okay.
And the people we are seeking to serve the interests of are not those who just happen to have come here in the last few years and got a passport and believe in democracy and tolerance and all the rest of it. It is the British people. And everybody who's listening to this right now knows exactly what
I'm listening and I don't. Okay, so can we go back over this again? Because I'm listening with intent. Reform has said that being British is people who, you know, support British values, who, you know, live here, etc. You're saying we all know who the British people are, and I'm saying explain it to me. Break it down for me, please.
I already have, Alex. How many times are we going to go?
Again, no, please, again. For me.
Look, I'm
explain to me who the British people are and how you're going to treat them differently to the people you regard as not the British people.
We have been through this already.
I know, but I'm not understanding it. It isn't clear to me because you are talking in the similar sort of safe terms that you accuse Reform UK of doing.
What do you mean?
What is this? You know, you talk about ancestry. How many generations do you need to have before you are British? Or you're talking about, you said white and Christian earlier. Is that important? How movable is that? I mean, explain it to me. 2 points here.
How many generations do you have to go back? 1, you have to have a British parent, right? This is not difficult to understand. If you have a British parent, then you are British, okay? Or half British, right? And in terms of the religion thing, this country and the 4 constituent nations that make it up were founded on Christian principles. They are absolutely fundamental to who we are as political organizations and as people, right? And so if you believe in things that are fundamentally antithetical to Christianity, like the creeds of other religions, then yeah, that does make you less British, I'm afraid, because this country was founded on Christianity.
What would you do about those people?
What do you mean, what would I? I've already said that we will outlaw practices associated with other religions if they are distasteful and frankly disgusting to our sensibilities, like halal and cousin marriage and all the rest of it. In terms of doing things to people, again, you keep trying to put these words in my mouth. We're not going to do anything to anybody. Okay. We're going to use the law to create the kind of culture that we want to have in this country.
Right. I understand all of that, but now now what I'm trying to understand is how that is different to what Reform are saying.
I mean, I think to everybody listening, they will be able to tell, because Reform are not offering anything close to this kind of agenda.
Okay. Look, Charlie, thank you ever so much. I appreciate you coming on. And I appreciate you sort of, you know, I know it's sort of got a bit tedious, me asking the same questions over and over again. I'm still not entirely clear, other than the fact that Restore have said they're going to ban halal meat, and I haven't heard that come from Reform yet, what the major differences are. I'm just not. But we have a lot of time to figure that out, don't we? Because you guys have just launched, so all strength to your elbow. I think it's a brilliant thing when people are standing up defending their nation. But I do think, you know, there are people out there who will have questions about we need the granular detail here, because when it's talking about difficult things, you know, you're British if you have one British parent, but then a few minutes ago, it's like there's the sliding scale of Britishness. And then there's a lot of things that I haven't had clarified that I think we'd need to have clarified, which will be the market between Reform UK and Restore Britain as very distinct entities. And that's sort of what I'm trying to look for. But, you know, you have just launched, and so there will be plenty more time to put forward your agenda for the country and your programme of policies. And we look forward to hearing them. And we will certainly have you back on to discuss them in the future. Charlie, thank you ever so much.